October 2020. I was working as a field asset manager for a regional bank, which is just a professional way of saying I was the guy who inspected foreclosed properties. My job was to drive out to these houses, document any damage, and ensure the previous owners hadn't stripped the place of its copper pipes or appliances. Most of the time it was depressing but routine. But on a Tuesday afternoon in late October, I was assigned a property in a very remote part of the county, tucked away at the end of a long, unpaved logging road. I pulled up to the house and noticed a fresh set of tire tracks leading directly into the closed garage. And for the first time in 3 years on the job, I felt a genuine knot of dread in my stomach. The house was a sprawling, single-story ranch style from the 1970s, surrounded by dense, overgrown pine trees that seemed to swallow the sunlight. I sat in my truck for a moment, checking my paperwork. According to the bank, this property had been vacant for at least 6 months. The previous owner had passed away, and there were no known relatives, so those tire tracks shouldn't have been there. I stepped out of my truck, the gravel crunching loudly under my boots. The air was cold and smelled like damp earth and rotting leaves. I walked up to the front door, my camera in hand, ready to take the standard exterior shots. As I reached for the handle, I noticed something else. The front door was slightly ajar, just a crack, maybe half an inch. I knocked loudly, announcing my presence. "Field Asset Management. Is anyone inside?" Nothing. Just the sound of the wind whistling through the pines. I pushed the door open. It didn't creak. It moved smoothly, as if the hinges had been recently oiled. I stepped into the living room, and the first thing I noticed was the temperature. It was warm. The heat was running. I walked toward the kitchen, my heart starting to thud against my ribs. On the wooden dining table sat a single ceramic mug. I reached out and touched it, scared. It was still warm to the touch. A thin wisp of steam was still rising from the surface of the coffee. My brain was screaming at me to leave, but curiosity, or maybe just the shock of the situation, kept me rooted to the spot. That's when I heard it. It was a low, rhythmic scratching sound coming from a small electronic device sitting on the kitchen counter. It was a baby monitor. I picked it up, my hand shaking, whispering. The static cleared for a split second, and I heard the sound of footsteps. But they weren't coming from upstairs or another room. They were coming through the speaker of the monitor, and they were perfectly synced with my own movements. Every time I shifted my weight, the speaker emitted a crunching sound. Panic. I realized with a jolt of pure electricity that there was a microphone somewhere in this kitchen, and someone was listening to me from another part of the house. I turned around to run back to the front door, but I stopped dead. On the wall next to the refrigerator, someone had pinned a single Polaroid photo. I leaned in to look at it, and my breath hitched in my throat, scared. It was a photo of my truck, but it wasn't taken here. It was taken at the gas station where I had stopped 40 minutes ago. The person in the photo, the person taking the picture, was standing close enough to see the reflection of their own high-visibility vest in my side mirror. I was wearing a high-visibility vest. I didn't wait another second. I bolted for the front door, but as I reached the living room, I heard a heavy, metallic sound from the back of the house. It was the door leading from the kitchen to the garage. I didn't look back. I burst through the front door and ran for my truck, fumbling with my keys in my pocket. I jumped inside, slammed the lock button, and jammed the key into the ignition. The engine turned over, but it wouldn't start. It just made a hollow, clicking sound. Someone had pulled the starter relay. I looked toward the house, and the garage door began to slowly roll upward. A man stepped out into the driveway. He wasn't some disheveled, wild-eyed lunatic. He was wearing a clean navy blue polo shirt and a high-visibility vest that was identical to mine. He even had a clipboard. He looked exactly like a professional inspector. He didn't run. He just stood there, looking at me with a calm, indifferent expression. Then he pulled a cell phone out of his pocket and held it to his ear. My own cell phone, sitting in the cup holder, began to ring. Nervous. The caller ID showed the number for my main office. I answered it, my voice trembling. Hello? On the other end, I didn't hear my boss. I heard my own voice. It was a recording of me from 5 minutes ago, saying, whispering, Field Asset Management. Is anyone inside? The man in the driveway began walking toward my truck, still holding the phone to his ear. He was playing back my own voice to me, over and over again. I realized then that this wasn't a random squatter. This was a coordinated effort. He had been following me, learning my routine, and he had prepared this house specifically for me. Scared, I didn't have time to think. I grabbed my heavy flashlight from the passenger seat, kicked the door open with all my strength, and sprinted into the woods behind the house. I could hear him behind me, but he wasn't shouting. He was just whistling, a low, tuneless whistle that carried through the trees. I ran for what felt like miles, my lungs burning in the cold October air. I didn't stop until I reached the main road, where I flagged down a passing utility truck. The driver saw the state I was in and immediately called the police. When the deputies arrived at the farmhouse an hour later, the man was gone. My truck was still in the driveway, but the hood was open, and the starter relay was sitting neatly on the driver's seat. Inside the house, the coffee mug was gone. The baby monitor was gone. The Polaroid was gone. The most unsettling part, though, was what the police found in the garage. They found a second high-visibility vest, a set of forged ID badges with my name on them, and a logbook. The logbook contained a detailed schedule of my movements for the past 3 weeks. It included my home address, the names of my neighbors, and the exact time I left for work every morning. The police never found the man. They told me that whoever he was a professional, and that I had likely interrupted a very sophisticated identity theft or replacement scheme. I quit that job the next day. I moved to a different city, and I haven't worked in property management since. Sometimes, when I'm at a gas station or a grocery store, I catch a glimpse of someone in a high-visibility vest in my peripheral vision, and my